What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Coffee Break presented by Bath Fitter. Rachel Vigil and D-Mac hanging out with you. Jake Shapiro and Will Peterson hopefully will be joining us here in a little bit. But D-Mac, how are you? How was your Wednesday night? It was beautiful here in the Mile High City.
I had a lovely night. I came home, had a wonderful dinner with my beautiful wife, and watched the one TV show she watches. She watches one TV show and one TV show only.
Okay.
Survivor. So we've been watching the TV show Survivor for 22 years.
Wait, it is so funny you actually bring that up because I had a really good friend of mine who her mom passed away unfortunately a few years ago, but they were like a diehard Survivor family, and she's like, now that I'm trying to remember my mom through Survivor, and so she was talking just about like how she loves it and how they're so into it every single Wednesday night, like they never make plans or do anything like that. So that's so funny. I feel like people are either you're on the Survivor train or you are not on it at all.
I'm going to relate this to the Denver Broncos. Give me a second.
Okay.
Why do people like the show Survivor? Why has it been popular for 22 years?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think?
Because it's consistent. It's like one of those things where you know exactly what you're going to probably see every single episode.
The formula. The formula.
Exactly.
I've heard Jeff Probst say that too. Part of the formula, I believe, is the difference between Survivor and a game show is you get to know the contestants.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, what they've done over the years is they've brought contestants back time after time after time.
Yeah.
You build relationships with the contestants so that voting somebody out is, it's complicated.
Yep.
It is difficult to build a story without knowing the characters. The more that you build up the characters, the more allegiance you have. That is why Hard Knocks is such a great show. And if you watch Hard Knocks, inevitably, no matter what football team that you love,
yeah,
or no matter what, no matter who you love, once you watch Hard Knocks, you can't help but, sort of pull for that team.
True.
And I'm just saying here, Rachel, if the Denver Broncos don't want us to build any of those stories here at this time of year where it's just layup after layup, then it's going to be a little trickier to get on board with the entire story. And that is the truth of it. Now, they can choose to do whatever you want because at the end of the day, the Broncos are a sporting team, not a game show. And, fans follow the team. But it's a lot more fun to follow the team, Rachel, when you have people that, you can get behind.
Yeah.
So there's heroes, there's villains, there's stories to be told. So right now, the Broncos aren't telling any stories. And if anybody just wants to say, oh, we don't need that and blah, 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 I think you're wrong. I think inevitably people love following the stories. The stories make us love sports.
So what is the perfect happy medium then? Because last year we got, all the inside access. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, we're seeing everything, but it was a train wreck. So what's the happy medium? Because I agree with you. I think people need to feel like you've bonded with your favorite team. And that can be really hard to do when you feel like you have no inside access. You have no idea what's going on. People love talking about sports. So what's the happy medium that it needs to come down to then when people are like, yeah, I feel like I'm connected, but I'm not getting so much information that I feel like it's going to be a joke of a season?
That's a great question. In my opinion, during the OTAs, which are only 3 days a week anyway, and they ruled out the training camp or the mandatory mini camp for veterans before the draft. Usually they have that. They're not doing that. I'd say 2 guys, 2 out of 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to do 4 weeks of this. So we're talking 4 guys times 4. We're talking 16 guys.
Uh-huh.
16 guys. In fact, when you watch Survivor or Hard Knocks, if you really watch it closely, they really only focus on a couple of people at a time. Yep. Like on Hard Knocks, you really may only know 7 or 8 people in total. So you don't need a million people. You don't need access to everybody. But what is the story of Mike McGlinchey, of Ben Powers, of Zach Allen, of little Jordan Humphrey? Like, who are these people? Callaway, who's a new receiver. And how are the veteran players doing? And what's going on with Javonte Williams? How's he doing? How's Tim Patrick doing?
Yeah.
We haven't seen or heard him in a long time. So to think that, we're just going to go all this time and not get to know any of the guys, I mean, okay, I guess. but you're not going to build up that allegiance either. And the only person that anybody is going to know anything about, Rachel, is Sean Payton, because that's all Sean Payton is doing. Now, do you need to go like in this direction? So extreme? I don't think so. Mm-hmm. Should you tamp it back from what it was? Absolutely. Yeah. You probably don't need coaches banging drums during, Broncos playoff games. You really don't. I mean, that's great if it works, but it really didn't translate. I'll tell you this, though, Rachel, I'll tell you this. Mm-hmm. The level of excitement for the Denver Broncos last year at this time was 10,000 times more than it is right now. The level of excitement and anticipation was through the roof at this time last year.
That was actually going to be my point of, I loved that they did that. I was so excited. Like, Ball Arena was so electric last year at that time. Yes, it was a little bit too much, but I was excited. Right now, I'm just kind of in this whole, I don't know exactly how I should feel because, again, you're just not connecting with anyone. Like, and I work in media. Like, I'm very connected to what's going on, and I kind of feel like I'm just in this, like, limbo period when it comes to the Broncos. And to be honest, I feel like a lot of people feel that way with the Nuggets and sometimes with the Avalanche too, because they can be so tight-lipped. But as of recently, when Jared Bednar is actually sitting out there and calling out his team in the most polite, respectable way it seems like ever, because that's just who Jared Bednar is, I felt like I got a deeper connection to that team and to, what they're going for in those moments too.
The truth is, the reason we love sports, Rachel, isn't the score on the scoreboard. It's the story behind the score on the scoreboard. True. That's the truth. As human beings, we want to feel connected. That's why the Rockies are so tough, because it's hard to feel connected to them. Like, what are their stories? Yeah. It's easy to tell their stories or hard to tell their stories.
One example, actually, though, is it was Chris Bryant, right? With the bed. And we were all like, oh, there's that storyline. And so all of a sudden we're like, well, what's actually happening with Chris Bryant? Is his bed still bothering him, after sleeping in that hotel? And like, even though it's a negative storyline and the Rockies still aren't good, people were still invested. Like, oh, what's going on with Chris Bryant?
Yeah, and I can juxtapose it with what's going on at CU. All they're doing at CU right now is, man, it's story after story. It's every single day. And all of a sudden, we're talking about CU more. Now, listen, you're the Denver Broncos. You're a pretty big deal, period, no matter what. So, okay. So CU really had to start from the bottom and tell these stories to work their way up. But they're doing a great job with it. And the level of interest with CU, I mean, it's off the charts. And it's off the charts, Rach, because they're building stories. Yep. We really don't know how any of these guys are going to do. But if I were to ask you, okay, now let's try it out. What to you is the story of CU football right now?
Well, I mean, it's Coach Prime, and if he's actually going to be able to accomplish all the hype that he's giving the program.
Okay. Shedeur Sanders, his son is there. They're passing out numbers to kids. Maybe they get them, maybe they don't. Deion Sanders just met Ralphie the other day. We get a little comedy in the story. Stories have heroes and villains. They have ups and downs. They have comedy. They have all sorts of things. So we're seeing a lot of, fun right now, because it's all really fun right now, twists and turns. Inevitably, there'll be some downs. That's the way it'll go. But you're going to root for CU. You're going to root for CU because you're going to know CU. You're always going to root for the Broncos because simply they're the Denver Broncos. And eventually, once training camp comes, okay, fine. I assume we'll be able to talk to guys and coaches and stuff when training camp comes. Yeah. I'm just saying that it's in my opinion, a slightly missed opportunity. And I think you can, and I didn't even mention Russell Wilson one time there. Okay. Mm-mm. But of course, Russell Wilson is a gargantuan story. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's he been doing? What's his training been like? Why is he in better shape? He looks like he's in better shape. What changes does he make? How does he feel about Jake Heaps not being in the building anymore? I mean, that was a big story at the time. Yeah. So listen, it's okay. You don't have to do it. I'm just telling you, you care about people on Survivor when they get voted out because you bonded with them somehow. If you didn't care, there would be no show, period. So, listen, I think the Broncos, after 7 years of missing the playoffs, 6 straight years of being under 500, doing a contract for Russell Wilson. And when I looked at Mel Kiper's mock draft, my jaw almost dropped because with the Broncos' arsenal of picks, according to Mel Kiper, they're going to get Hendon Hooker, a pass rushing defensive end, and the best defensive tackle in football coming out of the draft. That goes with a starting linebacker and Charles Cross, a starting tackle, as well as Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, and Noah Fant. I mean, Rachel, wow. And they pulled Geno Smith off the garbage pile and made him into one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and they got themselves to the playoffs.
Yep.
I mean, holy cow. And we got Russell Wilson, which would be okay if what? If what is okay to give up all of that value if the Broncos get what?
They make it to the playoffs. They win a Super Bowl.
Which one? Are you happy if they just make it to the playoffs?
That's a tough question. You just put me on the spot right there. Of course, you want a Super Bowl, but how hard are Super Bowls to come by? They are extremely difficult.
Tough?
It would be worth it if they make it to the AFC Championship game. That's what I'll say. But actually, I'm going to actually stop this conversation, though. I'm going to stop this conversation. No. You want to know why? Because, and I'm going to be a homer again, because the Broncos aren't the biggest story right now in Denver. They're not. You know who is? Right now, the biggest story, and that's going to change because give it time, people. I promise we're going to include the Avalanche in this. The Denver Nuggets are the biggest story right now in the Mile High City because they are gearing up for the playoffs. That is the biggest story right now. Do you agree?
Yes. Yeah, the playoffs start Sunday, which is going to be a schmidge before the Avalanche start the playoffs. And there's more questions. The story, again, it's the story with the Nuggets that is making us all, very, very curious because they went 12-11 after the All-Star break. They had lost 3 in a row before they won the final game of the season. They dropped that game to the Rockets. See what we're doing here? We're building the story. Are these players bought in or not? Will Michael Malone survive or not? And then you got, a couple of just amazing play-in games with the Lakers and the Wolves. And last night's game was just, outrageous. With Oklahoma City and New Orleans. And oh my God. Seriously, was the ball just thrown out of bounds? My heart broke. And I'm forgetting the player's name off the top of my head that threw the ball out of bounds. But all you had to do, Rachel, is inbound the ball to give yourself at least a shot.
Yeah, but that was on McCollum too, because he just went too far ahead. They were just too excited, I think, in that moment. I don't think you can blame. I now agree. I'm blanking on who it was, but it was McCollum that essentially missed the ball. So that game was the most. This is gonna make me sound bad. The most boring close game I had ever watched because it was just like things were flying, and I was like, I want to be invested in this, but then I was like, I am almost asleep at the wheel with that. But we will bring in Jake Shapiro because we do have a very full show today. We will bring him in because he was down there at Nuggets practice yesterday, and I am curious to hear the health of the big stars because, to be honest, they battled a lot of injuries this season, even if they, haven't been maybe talked about, Jake. But how is everyone feeling? Jokic, the calf, AG, that was really interesting what you came out of there with.
Yeah, it was. Obviously, no one's significantly injured like the last few years. And I said this yesterday to D-Mac on the drive. Yes, last year, no Porter, no Murray in the playoffs. 2 years ago, no Murray in the playoffs. We all know that. Everyone forgot about the bubble when their starting shooting guard, Gary Harris, and their starting small forward, Will Barton, missed almost the entire bubble. The Nuggets have not been fully healthy for a playoff series since 2019. Now, they will be fully healthy. They totally will be. But Jamal Murray's got a nagging thumb injury that bothers him every time he touches a basketball, which, by the way, is a lot when you're the starting point guard for a team. And the Nuggets only have Jamal Murray as an option there at point guard. They don't really have anyone else. They traded their backup point guard midseason, and they brought in Reggie Jackson, who's a veteran. He's a nice player, but just not where he is, where he's been at other points in his career. So the Nuggets really need Jamal just to play through this He's going to play through it. It's going to be okay. But the biggest revelation, perhaps, was that Aaron Gordon, at points this season, could not breathe. His rib was popping out every time he was breathing. He said he's feeling much better. It's night and day. He feels as healthy as he's ever been for a playoffs, and he's really happy with where he's at. So that's a huge piece of news, and it explains why Aaron Gordon went through this midseason slump. Me and DMAC were behind the scenes a little bit. We knew about this Aaron Gordon injury. We didn't know it was affecting him to this level, but it certainly explains himself. And Jokic seems pretty much fine. The calf injury was precaution rest. He sat 5 of the last 7 games. And the Nuggets seem pretty happy with where Nikola is. They practiced very hard yesterday, like a training camp practice. So the Nuggets, while all these other teams are perhaps getting injured inbounding basketballs, they're feeling pretty good about where they are right now.
We'll take it. That Aaron Gordon stuff, when I saw that, I literally was like, I can't imagine the pain he had to be dealing with. That's like really scary there, DMAC.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Ugh.
Gee whiz, how do you sleep? How do you do anything? How do you just walk around? I mean, these guys are tough, man. These guys are tough. And I know people are questioning their desire and if they're bought in, but we don't know all the stories sometimes behind the scenes. Again, we're talking about stories. I certainly didn't know that about Aaron Gordon. He wasn't complaining about it. So, hey, man, I'm a huge Aaron Gordon fan, period. So it doesn't surprise me that, and maybe too, Jake and Rachel, that has had an impact on him at the foul line because his 3-point shooting's been off and his foul shooting's been off. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, every time, you kind of raise up and you feel something, I get it. I can see how that could throw you off as opposed to just going up with power underneath the basket for dunks or rebounds where you kind of can just sort of, go through it and there's nothing to it, really, relatively. Although, think about how much bumping and, jostling goes on under the basket, too. But it does explain why his shooting's been a bit more off, and it shows you how much he probably sucked it up to be a good enough defender and strong on the offensive side, too, in the paint. So, hats off to Aaron Gordon. I am definitely concerned about Jamal Murray's thumb, man. Mm-hmm. I mean, that sucks. And, what are you going to do? That I could absolutely seeing that throw you off every time. And it's his right hand, Jake, right? It's his shooting hand, correct?
Yeah, it's his big hand. And, yesterday I said this to you on the drive, and I heard, the text line making fun of me, but it's true. Jamal Murray's worried all year about his knees. Yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of his original ACL tear. He did not think about it once. He is now saying he's in a frame of mind where he doesn't have a good leg and a bad leg. They're just both good legs.
Yeah.
I think that in a weird, perverse way, a hand injury that hopefully doesn't affect him too much can honestly take his mind off the knee and say, I can't, maybe I don't want to trust my shooting as much. Let me get downhill to the basket where I'm at my best. So in like this weird, conspiracy theory, James Merrillat tinfoil hat way, there might be some benefit to Jamal not focused on the legs anymore. And this injury popped up maybe within the last month during a game. It was like a contact injury, and it's just kind of been aggravated time and time again. The good news was when we were at practice yesterday, he was no longer wearing that like wrap brace thing that he's been wearing the last couple Nuggets games if you've watched.
Yeah, no excuses at this point. You got to suck it up, and you got to give it your best shot. I will say something because I did tear my meniscus and my ACL on my left knee, and it is wild that you think about it every day, obsessively, every day for, I think it was a good 2 years for me until, I just didn't think of it. I really had no thoughts of it. I kind of forgot about it. But you're so aware of it every single day, even when you're probably fine. It's hard not to keep your mind off of it until one day you just wake up and you don't think about it. It just doesn't happen. And maybe a couple days go by and it kind of hits you. Oh yeah. I haven't thought about it. It's not, it doesn't feel like that. The problem with knees is I was told after I had my knee surgery, the doctor just said, well, you're probably going to need a knee replacement in 15 years or something. Like, you're naturally going to have reoccurring issues with your knees if you've had that issue at some point. But Jamal's a young, healthy superstar athlete. I'm sure he's not really thinking about that, nor will it really matter until years and years down the line for him. So to get over the mental block, guys, I think is huge. And now, his hand may be okay, but maybe he will be thinking about that. We'll see.
But now the question is, and I see everybody in the comments that's asking it, is it the Thunder or is it the T-Wolves that you want to see, Jake?
Wow. Have you guys watched the 2 play-in games? Okay. It doesn't matter who the Nuggets played out of these 4 teams. They suck. Like, all 4 of these teams are mediocre. When it came to crunch time, they all failed. They found ways to lose. They are bad teams. They are mediocre teams. The Nuggets should handle any of these teams. But from day one, I think it was important to portray there are easier matchups and there are tougher matchups. There are matchups that the Nuggets will probably win in 4 or 5 versus maybe 5 or 6. And for me, this is another one of those clear decisions. I would rather face the Minnesota Timberwolves. That team is in disarray. They tried their darndest to lose in Los Angeles the other day and couldn't do it. Well, they did do it eventually, but almost were forced to not do it. And they're going to have a home game on Friday to decide if they play the Nuggets or not against an upstart Thunder team who has given the Nuggets problems throughout the course of the year. The Thunder have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who, if they played the Nuggets, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander would be definitely the second best player on the floor. In fact, Nikola Jokic probably is not going to be all-NBA first team, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander probably will be based off position. Whereas if you play the Timberwolves, you can make a strong case that Aaron Gordon might actually be the second best player in that series. Karl-Anthony Towns was a disaster last year in the playoffs against Memphis. Rudy Gobert is probably going to be back, but Nikola Jokic has famously cooked Rudy Gobert. His best smack talk line ever is when he had 50 points and he turned to Rudy Gobert, who was just yapping. He said, "Brother, I have 50 points." So, the Nuggets match up well with them. Anthony Edwards is a heck of a player, but Jaden McDaniels is their best defender, and that's where the Nuggets would struggle, and Jaden McDaniels is out for the rest of the season. So it's clear to me that you would want the Timberwolves, whereas the Thunder, they're going to stretch you out. Josh Giddey's a really good player. Lou Dort's an incredible defender. They might not have the size to match up with you if you're the Nuggets, but ultimately, that's a series the Nuggets win too. So these are just which one do you want to win with, because the Thunder play a completely different style than the Timberwolves, but I think playing the Timberwolves ultimately sets the Nuggets up for success best down the line, both because I think the series will be quickest and because the series will not be as physical and as taxing mentally as the Thunder series.
And real quick, D-Mac, before I let you speak, it's so funny because I actually watched the Thunder game and I was like, I feel like I'm watching a college basketball game. And maybe it was all the red in the stands and I was like, maybe I'm watching, I'm trying to think, the Badgers. Give me the name, please.
Wisconsin.
Thank you. I could not think of it. But I was just like, this is such bad basketball. Like, I was just like shocked by it. But D-Mac, I guess.
Rachel, they have a younger starting 5 than the Houston Cougars, the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, both teams yesterday, I was like, this is such a young squad on both ends. So I guess we're tied. We got one that wants the T-Wolves, one that wants the Thunder. Who do you want, D-Mac?
Well, first of all, I'm not afraid of either of those teams for the Nuggets matchup. I guess the easier path slightly maybe OKC, but Jake did accurately point out they've been they're like a little bug that won't go away for the Nuggets. I'm not afraid of either of them, but they've been annoying. I have my own kind of weird selfish reasons for wanting the Timberwolves. So let's just say I'm not afraid of either team. But my little sort of, go Wolves moment, first of all, story, Tim Conley. But second of all, there's a possibility that if the Avalanche, things don't quite go their way, would be in Minnesota playing the Wild the same exact weekend the Nuggets would be playing the Wolves. How's about that one? I mean, wouldn't that be kind of ridiculous if it was lined up where it's, Denver, Colorado, Minnesota? I mean, I think it'd be pretty cool.
The Kraken could just fly everybody out by
not,
themselves.
hey, you want to knock on wood? How about the first round? Denver, Minnesota, both teams. How about the last round for both teams? Denver, Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? Feel me on this? So I'm rooting for the story, and the better story would be Minnesota, Denver. Now, the Avalanche would have to stumble a little bit. Mm-hmm. They'd have to not get 3 out of the 4 possible points in their final 2 games. But that would, and Dallas would have to, win. And they're playing St. Louis, I believe, who's not very good. But we'll see. There's some good drama either way. So I'll root for Minnesota. I think both teams, though, are bad. I didn't know that about how young Oklahoma City was, Jake. That's crazy. And Minnesota's, they're not that good. So if everybody was worried about the Lakers for whatever reason, forget it. I think this first round for the Nuggets is actually going to be a pretty easy series. I mean, maybe they do drop a game. Something like that happens. But I seriously don't see the series going more than 5 games against either team.
Okay, well, let us know in the comments if you're watching who you would like to see the Nuggets face up with in the first round. Jake, thank you so much for hanging with us as we will bring in Will Peterson to talk a little bit about the Avs because tonight's kind of a weird game. The Avs are obviously playing for a little bit. Good morning, Will. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm good. So break it down for us because if you kind of look at it, you're like, oh, why would the Avs even try and do anything? But there's actually a little bit on the line, even though the Jets really aren't having anybody start either.
Oh, there's a ton on the line. The Central Division's still on the line. Home ice in the first 2 rounds is still on the line. Getting to play the Kraken as opposed to the Wild is on the line. So yeah, I don't think that the Avs are having any fear about the Jets or any worries that the Jets already clinched. Right? I think the Avs are thrilled that the Jets are locked in to where the Jets are locked in. So yeah, the Avalanche, there's 15 games in the NHL tonight. Every single team plays. There's about 4 or 5 that have huge ramifications, and this one does, but only for one team. So that's good news for the Avs. They'll be on fire, I would think, tonight while the Jets just kind of chill. And no, they need to win tonight, continue to control their own destiny. There's actually scenarios, guys, where they can clinch the Central tonight and lose the Central tonight. I think the most likely is that the Avs win and the Stars win, and it comes down to Avs Predators tomorrow night. But if they somehow get some help from the Blues, they could wrap it up. Or if they choke one to the Jets, the Stars could wrap it up this evening.
There's like 9 different scenarios for stuff that can happen tonight. It's actually kind of crazy.
Yeah, the Avalanche aren't going to worry about that. And as much as I may have a little selfish fantasy about just going to Minnesota for 4 days and seeing the Nuggets, Wolves, Wild, Avs, which would be fun as hell. I think the Avalanche will come full throttle tonight with what they have, and I think they win. I think they beat the Wild, and then it'll come down to the Watergate game against a kind of hapless, not hapless, I shouldn't say that. The Predators really battled the Flames tight in a game that mattered just a couple days ago, and then things didn't break their way to make it into the playoffs. And I really do think in hockey, if you knew this was my last hockey game and I'm playing in the NHL and I don't have any playoffs, I think you go full out. I think it's different than football. I think you really do throw everything at it, as opposed to the Jets tonight. The Jets tonight really, seriously, if they're smart, they would back off and just give this game basically to the Avalanche. They wouldn't take unnecessary risks. They wouldn't overskate their better players. They would probably play a backup goalie. They got nothing to go for, and they've got to get ready for a really tough test in the playoffs. So we'll see how they handle it. But, the Avs have something to play for tonight, and the Jets don't. It's at, home ice for the Avs, who played a splendid game against the Oilers, okay? I thought that was a great game. Didn't break their way all the way because, they lost in overtime. But I think they come out on fire tonight. And then that Nashville game tomorrow is sneaky. Mm-hmm. That's a really sneaky game. That's a tough one, man. I guess they got to get on a plane tonight after the game, go a couple time zones away to Nashville to play maybe a team that has nothing to lose. Like, I hate that game. I hate that they have to play it. I hate everything about it.
No, I couldn't disagree with D-Mac more about the Nashville game. D-Mac, the Predators were the team that gave up in games 3 and 4 last year in a playoff series. Why the heck are they going to play hard in game 82 when they got tee times and trips to Cabo planned? That is the biggest gimme of all time for the Avs. They're going to win that game like 6-1. The Predators would rather be anywhere else than having to be one of 4 teams to play a meaningless game because a water pipe broke in their arena around Christmas. If they quit in games 3 and 4 and their fans quit in games 3 and 4 of a playoff series, they ain't showing up for a game 82.
I wish I had your confidence there, Will. And you're discounting the back-to-back nature of things. And, just that sort of, again, for the Avalanche, it's 3 games and 4 nights against a team that has nothing to lose. Like, it's a combination of all the – listen, I'll tell you this. The Avs aren't cruising through to the end like they did last year. Last year in the final game of the season, I think it was against Minnesota, they didn't even take like half the team. They just stayed back in Denver because it was another sort of weird back-to-back, and they really didn't need it. So none of that. I mean, they definitely none of that. No matter what well, all right, hold on. Let me back up here, Will. If the Stars do lose and the Avs win, is that it? Do the Avs have the Central if that happens?
Yeah, like I said, there's some scenarios where if the Blues give them the help tonight. Now, they're on the NHL PR page, and I can't remember if the Stars have to lose in regulation or just lose in any fashion, but it's Jordan Binnington, an absolute Avs villain, in goal tonight for St. Louis. How funny would it be if Binnington goes out there, stones the Stars, steals a game 2-1, 3-1, the Avs take care of the Jets, and then, D-Mac, we get the best of both worlds because the Nashville game doesn't matter at all, and Nathan MacKinnon doesn't have to get on a plane tonight. Mikko Rantanen doesn't have to get on a plane tonight. That would be the perfect case. I'm just not counting on the Blues helping the Avs out. The Blues have fallen off a cliff the last 2 months.
So I've got all the scenarios right in front of me. So I'll quickly go through them. So if Colorado wins and Dallas wins, the Avs need to win on Friday. If Colorado loses and Dallas loses, the Avs need to win on Friday. If Colorado goes into OT and loses, plus Dallas goes into OT and loses, the Avs need to win on Friday.
Okay.
If Colorado loses or an OT loss and Dallas win, the Stars clinch the division. Colorado loses and Dallas OT loses, Stars clinch the division. If Colorado wins and Dallas loses, Avs clinch the division.
Okay.
Colorado OT loses and Dallas loses, Avs need 1 point on Friday. And if Colorado wins and Dallas OT loses, Avs need 1 point on Friday. So there are a ton of different scenarios that are going through. So definitely stay tuned. I feel like we need to put that up on our social media.
Well, and Jake just had the one on the screen there. Jake, if you can put that one back up, that's the one we should root for tonight. Because the one that was on the screen is basically this what we're seeing on the screen here, guys. Yep. This is Nathan MacKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Alexander Georgiev, Devon Toews. They don't have to get on a plane to Nashville. If the Avs defeat the Jets in any fashion, OT shootout doesn't matter, but the Stars lose to the Blues in regulation, no one has to go to Nashville. They win the Central Division. That's the best case scenario, but that's Jordan Binnington has to stand on his head and not just beat the Stars overall, but beat the Stars in regulation tonight. That would be a gift from the hockey gods.
So either way, the Avs have to win. In any scenario, one way or the other, whether it's an overtime or regulation, this game is critical for the Avs to win. Mm-hmm. So, okay, we get it.
All right, Will, who are you taking tonight? Are you feeling like the Avs are going to be going out there like, all right, we got something to play for? Or are you going to say the Jets B team essentially comes in and says, nope, we got this?
Yeah, I have to take the Avs. If the Avs feel like they don't have anything to play for, they just don't know how to look at the standings. I mean, unless they're doing some matchup manipulation and for whatever reason they'd rather play Minnesota than Seattle, I have to think that the Avs understand the significance of this game. Jared Bednar is preaching the significance of this game literally right now as they're at morning skate. I think the Avs win a laugher. Give me them like 4-1, 5-1. There's too much leadership on that team for them not to understand how big this game is.
I agree with Bill. I got 5-1, maybe even 6-1. I got a full steam ahead. Unless You know, a goalie can always stand on their head, right? That's the whole thing, you know, so, okay. But I say the Avs win this one relatively easily. You know, the Jets are worried about themselves, you know, and they know that they don't have much on, and we'll see who they play and they don't play tonight. You know, the last thing they can afford is any kind of injuries, and they can't help themselves one way or the other. Yeah. They have nothing to play for. I mean, literally nothing to play for. This game is completely meaningless to them. Mm-hmm. So I think that works in the Avs' favor. And, like, listen, man, the Avs get up a couple goals, I think it's a wrap. I mean, where's the desperation? Where's the sense of urgency from the Jets? I mean, they're just not going to have it, you know. So let's go Avs. I think they get a big win tonight, and then it faces. We'll see. I mean, it would be great if the Blues and Binnington can pull it off, and we just really don't have to worry about a stupid game that we shouldn't be playing anyways because your dumb water pipes burst in like January or whatever that was. I mean, that was hey man, it's plumbing. We haven't figured out plumbing. And I've been to Bridgestone Arena, great location, crappy facility. I mean, it's just old and broken down, and you know, they treat all their games like it's a high school hockey game with chants and weird signs if they show up at all. You know, I think they're just open for any bachelorette party that wants to make a 20-minute stop to see hockey before they get on to the next honky tonk.
And D-Mac saw a lot of those bachelorette parties when he was out there.
You can't avoid them, Rachel. Rachel, you cannot avoid them. They like Dion said, they aren't hard to find.
There's some kind of concerning news when it's been the conversation literally all year long when it came to Gabriel Landeskog. But Emily Kaplan had a report in the last Avalanche game about how he had a couple more appointments. And that leads me to believe Gabriel Landeskog is nowhere close to coming back and joining this Avalanche team. And my question to both of you is, and I think I've asked it before, but looking at the Avalanche team right now, do they absolutely 100% need Gabriel Landeskog out on the ice with them in order to win another Stanley Cup? Or do they have enough depth that they don't need the captain out there? Will Peterson?
Well, two things. I'll answer your question first. And They have gone on a 14-2-1 run over their last 17 games to give themselves a chance to win the Central Division. That's an impressive number down the stretch, no matter how you slice it. So I think they can win the Cup without Gabe because of what I've seen over the last 17 games. Do I want Gabe back? Of course. But I think they've shown me enough that they can still win the Stanley Cup without him. Never thought I would have uttered that sentence a month or two ago. But real quick on this Gabe thing, especially on this Emily Kaplan report. Guys, this is entering Jamal Murray territory from a year ago. It's getting unfair to the player that the team won't give us any clarification. And I know hockey's more secretive than basketball, but the Nuggets had these mixed messages about Jamal, and it turned into some vitriol toward Jamal. I'm not saying the vitriol is at the same level toward Gabe, but I have started to see some rumblings from people on social media of like, what is Gabe doing? They told us 3 months, yada, yada, yada. Guys, if you're questioning Gabe Landeskog's work ethic, you're crazy. Just like if you were questioning Jamal Murray's desire to be out there, you're crazy. But it's still, the Avalanche are doing Gabe no favors. They either need to say he is out for the season, which would end all the speculation, or they need to say he's out for round 1, we'll reevaluate if we get to round 2. But this constant day-to-day, is there a Gabe update, reminds me of Jamal last year, where it's becoming unfair to the player.
D-Mac.
Wow, a lot there.
I know.
Let me start with the Stanley Cup stuff. Okay. I think they can get to the Cup Finals without Gabriel Landeskog, but if the Boston Bruins, who are on a historic roll, get to the Stanley Cup Finals, I just don't think you can beat the best team in NHL history without your best players. So I think they can get there without them. I don't think they can win without them. Now, that's a long ways from now. I mean, the Stanley Cup Finals won't start till, like 6 weeks or so. Mm-hmm. So you got time, for him to still improve and get better. I am a little surprised with your take there, Will, that you think something's unfair here to Gabriel Landeskog, because I haven't felt that same pressure that Jamal was put under. Jamal was put under a lot of pressure. I mean, the management was just saying, well, this is up to Jamal. I mean, I haven't heard anybody from the Avalanche say anything like that about Gabriel Landeskog. I'm kind of curious where you see that connection.
I think, D-Mac, it's the lack of transparency, right? The Nuggets were not unclear, but they sort of put the onus back on Jamal, and that became unfair to Jamal. This is a little bit different, but it's the Avalanche's unwillingness to address what's really going on that, again, I see some people questioning if it's Gabe's decision at this point. And I think the Avalanche need to just tell us he had multiple setbacks, he's out till the rest of the season, or he's out till we'll reevaluate before round one. I think the day-to-day, is it going to happen, is it not going to happen, that's where it reminds me of Jamal, and that's where I think it's becoming a little unfair to Gabe, much like it was unfair to Jamal last year.
All right, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this, though. When I was watching Nathan McKinnon rehab practice, it was awesome. Like, it was before he had started playing again, and I'm watching him practice. He's physical. He's powerful on his skates. It's like, whoa. Like, it's obvious he's good to go. We haven't even come close to seeing that with Landeskog on the ice. And he's been rehabbing on the ice now for a while. I mean, I'm telling you guys, it's kind of a joke that it looks so far away.
Then D-Mac, they just need to rule him out. Like, you're kind of making my point. If he's so far away, then it's unfair to this charade of every day we're waiting for the Gabe update. He could be back.
Well, I mean, you put him in a red non-contact sweater. It's pretty clear. I mean, they do tell you every day. Every day he's out at practice or skating around, And don't forget, practices, unlike the NBA and the NFL, they're not closed. We can watch every single practice every single day. It's really great about the NHL. We can watch the whole time that they're out on the ice, top to start to finish. It's really remarkable when you think about how quiet they are, especially in the NFL. And the NBA is like that too. They only let the media in we couldn't watch the Nuggets scrimmage yesterday. That'd have been awesome. I would have loved to see the Nuggets scrimmage. Yeah. We get to see the Avalanche do everything. So I think they are a little bit more open because you can just use, your own two eyes and common sense. They don't tell you anything in the NHL. But, I mean, things are pretty damn obvious if you just go down there and watch.
Yeah, but I get Will's point of if you're not going down there every single day and you're a huge Avs fan, you're kind of just waiting to see what's going to happen. Like, I mean, even the media, how many times have we talked about Gabriel Landeskog and we're like, oh, he might be coming back. Oh, maybe.
Hey, Rachel, if he has that red sweater on, he ain't playing. Period. The end. That's it. That's it. And he's never been on the ice without that red sweater since he's come back. Period. There really is no sort of teasing here.
Cale Makar has the red sweater on right now. He's supposed
What's that?
Cale Makar has the red sweater on right now. He's
supposed to be back for round one. Okay. All right. But that's telling you but that's telling you something too. And by the way, who has promised that Makar would be ready for game one, round one? Who has made that promise?
They've said it was precautionary for this week, essentially. That's what I've been told or heard at least.
Jared Bednar said it morning skate before the Oilers. He said he expected Cale Makar and Manson round one about 48 hours ago.
Expect and playing is two different things. I'm telling you, these coaches will say he's going, he's good, he's fine. We expect is expect. And I would lean towards playing, of course, even in that scenario. But, I mean, I guess I'll just go back. They tell you how everybody's feeling. So I'll tell you this. In round one, game one, if Makar's got a red sweater on that morning, he ain't playing. No matter what they would expect to not expect. I don't know. Maybe he could sleep on a Chris Bryant bed and not feel all that great in the morning. Who knows? So I would expect him to be back too. But because we really have no clue what lower body injury it was, we really don't know. I hope so. We all hope so. But Landeskog, listen, guys, he ain't playing anytime soon, okay? So you got to figure out how to move along without him. And even if he were to come back, guys, you think he's going to be really in hockey shape? I mean, really? You know, his contributions, even Nathan McKinnon, who looked spectacular in his rehab, needed a couple of games to really, truly get up to speed. And once he got up to speed, he's been, I mean, next to McDavid, he's been the best player on earth. So, you know, you can certainly recover from injury and play well. If we're just talking about this, guys, I'm not expecting to see Landeskog at any point in the playoffs, and I'm bummed about it. We thought he'd be back by Christmas. Remember us talking about that? Like, oh, January, whatever. You know,
that's why this has gotten so ridiculous. We're in April. Like, it's just been constant. Oh, well, we'll see what's going to happen with Gabe. We're going to see what's happened with Gabe. It's been 4 months since we originally were told, and I think that's where the frustration lies with a lot of people.
Well, I think because there was another injury in his rehab. I don't think it's been the same thing. I think it's been a couple of different things along the road, unfortunately.
Then share that. I know hockey's secretive, but gosh, is it freaking annoying to have these conversations over and over again with no answers. We will move on to the Broncos, though, because as you can tell, I'm getting a little fired up over Gabe because I just want to see him back out there on the ice. But the running back, Latavius Murray's hanging out with the Buffalo Bills. Will he head over there? When I actually heard this news, I was kind of sad. I really liked Latavius Murray. Of course, with CJP Ryan, coming in, you kind of were like, all right, LM's going to be leaving. But how are you both feeling about Latavius Murray possibly heading over to the Buffalo Bills? What a team to go to.
Well, I think that, Latavius Murray was the Broncos' best running back last year. And once they signed him, and Javonte Williams shredded his knee, I wrote columns at denversports.com that he's going to be the number one because Melvin Gordon's so incompetent, and Melvin Gordon eventually got himself cut. Latavius was one of the lone bright spots on the offense down the stretch. So do we know Javonte Williams is going to be back in week 1? No, we don't. We have no idea. So, yeah, Samaje Perine's a nice addition, but last time I checked, you need 2 running backs in the NFL. I would have brought back Latavius Murray. I don't like letting him get away to Buffalo. And I know Andrew Mason wrote it's not that big a deal at denversports.com, and he makes a compelling argument, but I actually do think it's a big deal because until the Javonte Williams situation is cleared up, you're going to need 2 running backs in the month of September, particularly, and maybe even into October. Latavius Murray would have been a vet minimum kind of guy, I assume, and he has a relationship with Sean Payton. Feels like a mistake to me to let him get away.
They picked up Latavius Murray midway through the season. Who knows? Maybe they can pick him up midway through the season again. I don't know. Their commitment is to Perine and likely a drafted running back, and hopefully Javonte Williams as it comes back. I'm not bothered by it at all. They picked him off the trash heap halfway through the year last year. What you need is a great offensive line, and you need a running back who's not going to, fumble the ball. I think Latavius Murray is a great dude. Got nothing against him. There's other guys like him out there. There always will be. There will be during the season. It's really, honestly, not that big of a deal. And I would keep your eyes open on a running back for the Broncos to go within the first 3 picks that they eventually have. But, then again, what are they going to do with those 3 picks too? I doubt they just sit there. I think they either package and move up, but I would say that's probably unlikely considering they only have 5 picks. So you may see them move back. And if you want to pick up a running back because you picked up an extra 4th or 5th round pick to deal one of your 3rds, there you go. I mean, that's where you pick up like depth running backs that also play special teams that more or less would play the role of Latavius Murray. That's the way it goes. It's the NFL.
And running back is so hard to. I mean, look at Ezekiel Elliott. He's still out there. Nobody's picked him up, which is why I think it was also a little surprising to say Latavius Murray's name pop up when it came to the Bills, because there are some pretty big. I mean, Kareem Hunt is still out there too, I believe. There's definitely some bigger names available, in free agency. Will.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's why Latavius Murray is getting connected to a contender, because he was good for the Broncos last year. So, yeah, they may have picked him up off the trash heap, but the trash turned into, not treasure, that's too strong a word, but it turned into something edible. So, yeah, if the Bills are going to look at him before they're going to look at Zeke, I think that tells you the Bills' mindset, right? That, hey, Latavius Murray can still play, and maybe he can still play more than Zeke. So I disagree with the assessment that it's a whole lot of nothing, and maybe they can get him back in midseason because, no, he's going to be on a Super Bowl team in midseason, and the Bills aren't going to let him go.
I might
Well,
need to start bringing popcorn for Will Peterson DMAC days more so than Mike Evan because you two are disagreeing a whole lot. I'm loving it.
Well, if it's not Latavius Murray, it's a player like Latavius Murray if they need it. There'll be plenty of guys like that out there. And even with the vet minimum, which I'm sure that's what he signed with the Bills, you can get a guy on the cheap if you draft him in the 4th or 5th round too. So, or you can pick up a guy at midseason. Listen, this is just not a big deal. Okay, they made a financial investment in P. Ryan, and they do have, at least at some point, Javonte Williams coming back. That's the plan, and it's a solid plan. And if you really, we're not. The last thing we need to be worried about is Latavius Murray. It's just seriously not a big deal. Latavius probably does suit a more veteran team that needs like those other small pieces of the puzzle. The Broncos pieces that they need are still large, okay? And they got to figure out their offensive line and what they're doing with Russell Wilson in terms of getting everything under control. And, I don't see where Latavius Murray is seriously, guys, that big of a deal. If you love him, you love him. I get it. He was good for him, but it's like, really? We got Samaje Perine. What's wrong with him? You're going to give him the ball 25 times.
But also to the point of the missing puzzle pieces are also really huge. So if you have a decent back already, why not keep him and just put your focus on the bigger pieces than having to go find another running back?
Because the NFL is disposable when it comes to running backs. It just is. And paying a running back big money, and not that they would pay Latavius Murray big money, but it's a crazy thing. You've got to get such unbelievable production out of these guys. And look at a guy as good as Derrick Henry. I mean, seriously, what have the Titans really ever done? I mean, they've been okay, but, even a guy as talented as Derrick Henry can be bottled up. Nah, I mean, you need a significant offensive line and a quarterback and offensive coordination that's going to really Will and Rachel, I've been here since 1999, okay? Every year we fall in love with some sort of running back. I mean, it's crazy how many running backs throughout the years everybody falls in love with, and everybody's looking for the next Terrell Davis, who was drafted like in the 6th round, or Landeskog, or I don't know, not Landeskog, but anyways, listen, there's always guys. There's always guys. C.J. Anderson was picked up the scrap heap by the Rams, and he's in the Super Bowl. And I don't think he was even working, and he's playing in the Super Bowl. If you have the right offensive line and system, and you got to hold on to the ball, though. That is true. Not anybody can do it. You got to be able to hold on to the ball.
Real quick, since you've been here, you're playing the age game on us over here. Is Melvin Gordon the most hated running back in Broncos history?
Well, Melvin Gordon.
Well, so it is him.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't even know who number 2 would be. No, I've never seen a running back as despised as Melvin Gordon in this city. Never. Will?
No, I mean, it's unfair because he had a lot of life stuff going on, but when it was all said and done with Montee Ball, there was a lot of disappointment around Montee Ball. But again, Montee Ball had real life issues. Melvin Gordon just had a fumbling issue, so it feels kind of unfair to compare them. But you're right. I mean, DMAC, the early 2000s, you had Landeskog, Tatum Bell, Mike Bell, Quentin Griffin, Mike Anderson, Clinton Portis, who you eventually traded for Champ Bailey. Like that's what made Mike Shanahan so genius, is he could just plug and play behind Mark Schlereth and Tom Nalen and Matt Lepsis, et cetera, et cetera.
There you go.
Oh, look, DMAC and I are spending too much time together. Holy smokes. All right, Will Peterson, as always, we appreciate you hanging out with us. We're excited for all your Avs coverage. Anything good coming out from you on DenverSports.com?
Well, Keyshawn Johnson says he knows Sean Payton well, and he knows him well enough that if Russell Wilson stinks this year, they're getting a new quarterback in 2024. I'll have that up in the next half hour or so at DenverSports.com.
All right, we'd love to see it. Will Peterson, huge thank you. Now, Brandon Marshall, he's talking about our very own Brandon Stokely. Take a listen.
Under 60 seconds left on the clock, you're on the 20-yard line. You need a touchdown to win it. You're in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Which quarterback do you want? Jay Cutler or Ryan Fitzpatrick?
I'm going to go with Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Still, okay.
Let me tell you why. 2007, we're in Denver. I want to say it may have been I know it was a nighttime game, so I don't know. I think it was maybe like Sunday Night Football, playing against the Buffalo Bills. And I'm the guy. And Jay Cutler knows I'm the guy. He made me the guy, helped me make me be the guy. And same scenario. He threw it to Brandon Stokely 3 times in a row. And I never talked to, the last year I talked to Jay like this. It was the first time when in our early career that I went up to him and I said, bro, don't ever do that again. So what are you doing? Like, I'm over here one-on-one. I don't give a damn. Even if it was 2 guys on me, throw the damn ball up. You went to Brandon Stokely, who I love. He taught me how to play the slot position. He's a legend. But we threw it to Brandon Stokely 3 times in a row. They went like blitz 0. So they thought they had something in the middle. Like, let's go with the play. Ain't the play. It's come on, just throw it up.
I love that so much. First of all, Brandon Marshall, loved him as a player, but his media career has been so much fun to watch. Like, he has just blossomed, and he is sharing all the secrets. I think he's so fun to listen to. I love it.
Why does Stoke have to catch the strays?
I know.
Like, what's that all about?
I
mean,
know.
what did Stoke do wrong there?
I'm like wishing Brandon Stokely is out today. I was like, I really want to reach out to him and just be like, Stoke, like, you got any remarks you got to say back to B Marsh? Because I think it's so funny. But I just love hearing these types of stories behind the scenes. I think they are so interesting.
Yeah, that's fun stuff. Listen, you want to talk about a weird time in the Denver Broncos history, man. I mean, that was those were the final days of Mike Shanahan, Rachel, and it's hard to hear. I like Brandon, okay, and we've had our own weird up and down rocky road that I think is okay at this point, but
Did you ask him an interesting question, or why do you have a rocky road with Brandon Marshall?
Well, because when you're doing things to disrupt the team or doing bad things for the team, and Brandon was involved. I don't want to rehash everything because it's so much water under the bridge, but there was a lot of drama, a lot of stories. We're getting back to stories. And with Brandon Marshall, you can look it up. There were plenty of stories going on.
Yep.
But that being said, what I really like about Brandon Marshall is that he's been very upfront with the issues he was dealing with, especially with mental health. And I think he's been amazing in the media. So I really appreciate that story. I think it's great. I think it's funny to hear Stokely get a couple of strays. But it does go to show you with Jay Cutler and the Broncos during that time period, what, another crazy story of dysfunction back in their history. It's just, it was a wild time. And the relationship between Cutler and Brandon Marshall Rachel, it's really fascinating because not only were they well connected here in Denver, but also in Chicago. So they've got their own, that got nothing to do with me, nothing to do with Denver. They got their own very unique history between the two of them. So when you hear a story like that, are we saying it in fun because we like each other, or are we hashing out old bitterness that's never been resolved? And it's like, I don't think it's all that easy to tell. I'm not really quite sure there.
I think it's out of fun now, only because he said that he had talked to Cutler like in the past few years or something along those lines. I know Jay Cutler's like semi put his toe in the water when it comes to media too. Well, real quick, and this is going to make me sound really young, so don't yell at me, anybody in the comments, but it was Josh McDaniels and Brandon Marshall, right, that he sat B Marsh?
Well, the real issue with Josh McDaniels is he wanted to bring, I'm forgetting his name. He wanted to bring, this is bad, but he wanted to bring the quarterback, Matt Castle. He wanted to bring Matt Castle from the Patriots to replace Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler was the number 1 draft pick in, I think, his 3rd or 4th year or something like that. And right off the bat, Cutler and McDaniels didn't get along. And sadly, this was right around the time where the Alzheimer's with Pat Bowlen was kind of, sort of having an impact. And so it was really like, Rachel, like, who is seriously in charge around here? So the one thing you don't want to do as a brand new first-time coach is alienate your first-round quarterback. I mean, let's get to know each other a little bit. But that was probably a part of Hurricane. That's why he got the nickname Hurricane Josh McDaniels, because he just came in like a hurricane and, just destroyed everything. And then it's like gone, and you're like, well, what happened here? And that was the nature of Hurricane Josh McDaniels. So Brandon was, he was looked upon as a good player and everything and a positive guy overall, but he wanted out eventually. And, he's kicking footballs at practice. And, there's stories about him in a McDonald's bag and how he got hurt with his wrist. And but again, you know what? I shouldn't even rehash it because it's so old and it doesn't mean anything at this point. Brandon's a good dude, really good dude. And he's just being honest with a fun story. And a more really interesting tale would be to sit down with Brandon Marshall, the receiver, and just go into his relationship with Cutler. I mean, that's a big part of Denver Broncos history, and these were the final years of Mike Shanahan. So it's definitely significant, no doubt about it.
I think I was like 10 to 13 years old during that time, so
no problem. I get it.
Quite a long time ago, but I do remember.
Let me tell you this about that time for me. So for the years that I've been here since 1999, I have a blind spot, and it's when I got fired from one radio station here in Denver. I ended up working for another station in Colorado Springs while still doing part-time news talk during that time where I really wasn't doing sports. And the radio station in Colorado Springs was more of a female-based radio station. So we really just didn't, we didn't do what we do here. We didn't go into depth on things. We talked about the Broncos and that sort of thing, but we, talked about a lot of other things. It wasn't just heavy duty sports. And I was still living here in Denver, but I was like kind of out of touch. I really wasn't covering sports. I wasn't really talking about sports. And all this drama kind of happened in that period. I got back to the Fan in 2008. Can you believe that? 15 years this month. 15 years this month at the Fan. But trust me, when I came back in 2008, I was like, well, who are these guys? Yeah. What's going on here? But, I caught up to speed relatively quickly. And that's where things kind of went sideways with Brandon Marshall and Mike Shanahan. And we had all sorts of crazy turnover. It was Josh McDaniels that came in, and it all led to, Rachel, Tim Tebow. And that decision, which really was one of the most amazing times in Broncos history. That 2 years with Tim Tebow, Rachel, I am so glad I was around for it. But it had a precursor, and that was Jay Cutler. In all honesty, Rachel, Jay Cutler should have had a 15-year career here. He was a first-round pick with loads of talent. There was no reason Jay Cutler shouldn't have been the Broncos all this time. Seriously. And, the rest, they say, is history. So it's amazing to see the dominoes fall, and that relationship with Cutler and Brandon Marshall and Josh McDaniels was a precursor to all the good things that we remember.
True. Very true. It all comes
and by the way, during those years, while they weren't successful in the playoffs, they were still like a good team that would barely miss the playoffs. Yeah. They were always right there, like right around 8 wins. I mean, even during this very tumultuous time, Rachel, we never had anything like we had last year. As weird as things were, nothing was as bad as what we had last year.
Oh, stories, man. Stories. It's all storylines. We start and end at the same spot, essentially, D-Mac.
That's it. And we're storytellers, Rachel, and it's fun to be the fly on the wall. And we root for our heroes, but we also have to accept our villains. And, we turn the page because the best question to ask in sports is, what's next?
Cheers. Hopefully some championships here in the Mile High City. To everybody hanging out with us in the comments, we appreciate it every single day. To Will Peterson, Jake Shapiro, D-Mac, to yourself, we appreciate you guys hopping on with us, talking sports, which we love to do, and we'll see you guys tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. for another episode of Coffee Break. Have a wonderful Thursday, everybody. We'll see you later.